Hi, this is Dr. Bhavna Pandey, Assistant Professor from School of Management, Babu Banarsi Das University, Lucknow. My today's lecture is titled Attitudes and Job Satisfaction. So, what are attitudes? Attitudes are evaluated statements or judgments, either favorable or unfavorable, concerning objects, people, or events. So attitudes, they reflect the feelings about something, and the feeling may be favorable or unfavorable. For example, I like this person or I don't like this person. Then attitudes always has a referent. Like in general, you can say a person may have a positive or negative attitude, but attitudes are always directed towards something, so it always has a reference. So they may be directed either towards an object or people or events. Now, attitudes, to understand attitudes, we have to understand its fundamental properties or components of an attitude. Researchers have identified the three components: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. Now, these components are highly interrelated, and especially cognitive and affective, they are inseparable in many ways, and they just happen instantaneously. So, like for example, what is the cognitive element? It is the belief or the opinion segment of an attitude. Like for example, my pay is low. This is the cognitive element. This is how you perceive it. The affective element is the emotional or the feeling segment of an attitude. Like I'm angry over how little I am paid. So this is my feeling, my unfavorable feeling towards my salary or pay. The third is the behavioral. Now, this is the intention or the behavior, the action the person takes as according to what his feelings are. So, like for example, if the cognitive element says that my pay is low, so how am I feeling? I'm angry over how little I am paid. So, what is my behavior? I'm going to look for another job, right? So, these are the three components, and they are related to each other, and especially cognitive and affective. So it's not like it happens in a step, and they happen very instantaneously. So a person may not realize that he has gone through these three elements. So, just imagine if somebody says something to you unfair, and you instantaneously have a feeling, right? So you realize, and then instantaneously you have a feeling to the statement that is said to you. So these are the three components of attitudes. Now, attitudes are important to any organizations because attitudes generally lead to behavior, and so that is why they are important in organizations. And because it affects the behavior of the employees, so one must understand how attitudes are formed and how they can be changed. Now, there are some variables. The link between attitude and behavior is strengthened by some of these, if these variables are present. So, for example, how important is the attitude? So, if the attitude is important to the person, it will show more in his behavior, right? So, for example, if the person feels that wearing branded clothes is very important to the person, so he will very often wear it. Secondly, how closely it corresponds to behavior. So, attitudes, if you ask someone how the person, what intention the person has about leaving the organization in the next 6 months, so this will predict a correct behavior rather than asking someone what the intention would be in a year or so, right? So if attitude closely corresponds to behavior, then it predicts correct behavior. Then the accessibility of the attitude, that means how often we remember it and or how easily we can access it. So if we are more likely to remember the attitude, or if we express that attitude more frequently, then it shows up more in our behavior. Then another thing is the social pressure. So attitudes will reflect in the behavior if the social pressure is less, rather than if the pressure is high. So, for example, if the person finds smoking cool, and if there is less social pressure, then he will continue doing so. But if there is more pressure, then he may not try to show it in his behavior. And lastly, the direct experience with the attitude. So, a person who has experienced that attitude is more likely to predict, is more likely to show up in his behavior rather than the person who has not experienced it. So, like for example, if you ask a person who has no work experience, and you ask him how he would react to an authoritative superior, so he may not be able to predict it correctly as compared to a person who has had an experience working with an authoritative person. So these are moderating variables, and if these variables they are present, then the link between attitude and behavior is more strong. Does behavior always follow from attitudes? So there was a researcher named Leon Fessinger, and he said that it's not always that behavior follows attitudes, and there are cases when attitudes follow from behavior. So, and these cases illustrate the presence of cognitive dissonance. So, what is cognitive dissonance? It is any incompatibility between two or more attitudes, or between behavior and attitude. So, if there is any incongruency, or if there is any imbalance among the attitudes or between behavior and attitudes, so then we feel this cognitive dissonance. And this cognitive dissonance, it is kind of inconsistency, and it makes the person uncomfortable. So the person tries to reduce it to reach stability and consistency. Research shows that people seek consistency by changing their attitude, or by developing rationalization for the discrepancy. So, like for example, if what the person is saying, and what the if the attitude of the person is different from what the person is actually showing in his behavior, there is inconsistency, and the person will try to rationalize it, or he will try to bring in more consonant elements to it, or he will either change his behavior, or he'll either change his attitude. Now, no, like I can give an example here. For example, if a person buys a dress, and on bringing it home, she realizes that the dress is not looking good, or she made a wrong purchase. So there is a consistency. There is an inconsistency here. There is cognitive dissonance. So she may either try to return the dress, that is, she was changing the behavior, or she may try to change the attitude. She may try to control herself by saying, okay, the dress is not so expensive, so like there's no harm in keeping it, or she may wear the dress in some occasions, it may look good, and so on. Now, no individual is completely avoid from dissonance. So we all experience this feeling in our lives, and we experience it quite often. So Fessinger, he proposed that people do not always want to reduce dissonance, so, right? So this feeling of this cognitive dissonance, we don't try always to reduce this tension, and we only try to reduce it depending on these three elements. So first is the importance of elements. Second is the degree of influence or control over the element, and third is high rewards. Now, let's explain it with an example. Let's say, for example, you are a manager and you've been asked to lay off people, and you have a feeling that laying off is not good, but due to restructuring in the organization, you have been asked to lay off people. So you are experiencing dissonance here, right? Now, again, if you look at the importance part, now as a manager, this decision is quite important for you, and so you will either change your behavior, you will lay off people, or you will try to change your attitude that since the organization is restructuring and it has to be done, and after all it is not so bad laying off people, or you will try to bring in more consonant elements, that is, you will say that it will be more beneficial for the organization in the long run, the costs will come down, and it may also be beneficial for you. So like this, the person is trying to bring down the dissonance. Then secondly is the degree of influence. So if the person has control over the decision, right? If if for example, as a manager, you if you don't have to take the decision of laying off people and you just have to forward the list, then the tension may not be so much and you may not try to reduce the dissonance. So if you have all the control, or you can influence the decision, then the dissonance is more. And third is high rewards. So if you see there are high rewards attached to it, then you will try to bring down the tension. So like for example, you may say that in the long run you may be compensated well, and since there will be less people, your salary will not be affected. So if you see high rewards, you will try to bring it down. And so I have already given this example here. Now there are many attitudes, but in OP we focus mainly on the attitudes that are related to the workplace, and there are major job attitudes. So first is job satisfaction. This is a very important attitude as far as employees are concerned in any organization. So what is job satisfaction is how a person feels about his job and the characteristics of the job. So if a person has a positive feeling about the job, then he is satisfied, and if he has negative feelings about the job or the characteristics, the different elements of the job, then he's not satisfied with the job. Now again, job is not just about shuffling papers, coming and sitting down in your desk and looking at the papers. It is much more than that, right? So just driving the truck is not the job. So it involves much more than that. There is interaction of the employee with other people, with his colleagues, job, with the supervisors, and so on. Then there is the pay element. There are working conditions, your co-workers, supervisors, and then the leadership style, nature of work. So there are many elements of job. So if the person has positive feelings, then that means that he is satisfied with his job. Secondly, the job involvement. Job involvement, it measures the degree to which people identify psychologically with their job and consider their perceived performance level important to self-worth. So this job involvement means that how the employee finds his work. If he finds that his work is meaningful and he's making a contribution in the overall goals of the organization, then there is high job involvement. And closely related to job involvement is another concept called psychological empowerment. This is the employee's belief in the degree of influence over the job, competence, importance, job meaningfulness, and perceived autonomy. So that means how does the employee perceive his job, and how does he see uh, uh, does he perceive autonomy in his job, or does he see that he can influence the decisions in his job, and does he see that he can make changes in his job or take important decisions. So it's the employee's belief, right? So if he sees that he has considerable influence and autonomy over the job, then he feels more psychologically empowered. Then the next attitude is organizational commitment. That is how the employee identifies with the particular organization and its goals, while wishing to maintain membership in the organization. So, if a person is committed to the organization, so he identifies positively with the organization that he is associated with, and he wants to remain in the organization as a part of, as a member of his organization. So there are three dimensions to it: the affective commitment, continuance commitment, and normative commitment. Affective commitment means how emotionally the person is attached to the organization. Continuance means the employee is committed to the organization because he sees economic value of staying there. And normative is the person is committed to the organization because he feels a kind of obligation or moral duty towards the organization. So research shows a very positive link between affective commitment and various outcomes like job satisfaction, the intention to leave, productivity, performance, etc. So affective is how emotionally, if the person is emotionally attached to the organization, so no matter, even if he does not find the job very satisfying, he's still viewing favorably his work and the organization, and he is committed to the organization, and that leads to various favorable outcomes. And the link is weakest in case of continuance commitment. That is where the employee is only committed to the organization because he has no other option, and maybe the market conditions are not right, and he's not able to find another job. So he sees economic value of staying with the organization. So if continuance commitment is the case, then the outcomes are not so favorable. The person is not so dedicated to his work and the organization. Another thing is the perceived organizational support. Now, this is the degree to which employees believe the organization values their contribution and cares about their well-being. So, this is like the employee, if he sees that in case he is in trouble, then the organization will support him, and so if he perceives that the organization will support him in times of need, then the perceived organizational support is high. And POS is higher when rewards are fair, employees are involved in decision making, and supervisors are seen as supportive. Some findings show that high POS is related to high organization citizenship behavior and performance. So if the employee perceives that he has the organization to support, and then he feels more like a member of the organization, and he is more committed to the organization. So the higher the POS, higher are the favorable outcomes in the job. And then we have employee engagement as another job attitude. Employee engagement is the degree of involvement, satisfaction with, and enthusiasm for the job he or she does. So a person who is highly engaged with the job means he finds satisfaction in his work, he's fully committed to his work, and he's very enthusiastic about what he is doing. So When people are passionate about their work, they feel a sense of deep connection with the company. On the other hand, people who are not engaged, disengaged employees, they're always looking out. When will the job hours get over, and when will they check out from the organization? So the disengaged employees are not very satisfied with what they are doing, and so they are not very involved with the work. Okay, now since job satisfaction is a major job attitude, and attitudes lead to behavior, so this particular attitude is very important to managers, and every organization should understand it, how employees get affected by it. So when we say job satisfaction, it is a very broad term, and it involves complex individual summation of a number of discrete job elements. So as I said earlier, job does not entail, just coming to your work and looking at the papers and, taking few decisions. So it is much more than that, and you are inspired, apart from doing your work, you're also interacting with the environment and with the people who are there. And then what how are you being paid for your work, then the nature of the work that you are doing. There are different elements of job, and when you sum up these job elements, then that also provides you how a person is whether a person is satisfied or dissatisfied with the job. So this concept can be measured through two approaches. So one is the single global rating. Single global rating involves just a single question, right? So for example, you can ask how satisfied are you with the job. Now the person on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is highly satisfied and 5 is highly dissatisfied, the person can circle any number, and that will show how the person is, to what degree the person is satisfied or dissatisfied with his job. So this is one way of measuring job satisfaction. Another way is the summation score. Now in the summation score, uh, it the different key elements of the job, like the nature of the work, pay, supervisor, uh, promotion opportunities, and so the different key elements of the job, they are identified, and the respondent has to answer, again on a scale of 1 to 5. That is, if we are taking 1 to 5 scale, so the person has to circle the number showing the degree of satisfaction and dissatisfaction with the different elements of the job, and the researcher can then sum up all these score and find out the job satisfaction score. So this is another way. So both these approaches are valid. Single global rating, it is less time consuming, but it gives an overall picture of how a person is satisfied or dissatisfied. But in the summation approach, the manager will come to know exactly where the problem is, right? So, for example, in let's say the promotion opportunities, right? The person may give, may score less there, and that would help the manager to know that this aspect of the job is not satisfying to the employees. So both the approaches they are valid, and they can be used depending on what aspect of the job we are looking at. So how satisfied are people in their job? Now research has shown that more workers are satisfied with their jobs than compared to people who are not satisfied in their job. So the number is less there, and the number is more as far as workers being more satisfied. Now another, I think another, especially in the developed countries, the employees are more satisfied, and as compared to the Eastern countries, Asian countries. Then research also shows that people are less satisfied when there is economic downturn um, prevailing in the country, and that is another thing. So research shows that satisfaction levels vary a lot, right? So it depends on what aspect of the job you are looking at. So people on an average, they are satisfied with their job overall and with the supervisors and co-workers, but they tend to be less satisfied with pay and promotion opportunities. Then, though job satisfaction is relevant to all cultures, but still there are cultural differences. And again, research has shown that employees in the Western countries, they are more satisfied as compared to Eastern counterparts. So one reason is that maybe people in the Western culture, they emphasize more on positive emotions, and they more emphasize more on individual happiness. And then again, Scandinavian countries, Switzerland is highest as far as job satisfaction is concerned, and Eastern South Korea. Now, what causes job satisfaction, right? So again, enjoying the work itself is almost always related to job satisfaction. So the work itself uh, is very highly related to job satisfaction. So if the work is interesting and it has a lot of variety, and the person can take independently take actions, decisions, and there's not much of supervision and control over how the employee does, then that can provide a considerable job satisfaction to the employee. Now, pay is another thing that influences job satisfaction, but only to a point. So, research has shown that up to a certain point, pay can provide job satisfaction, but then beyond that, it may motivate a person, but it is not necessarily related to happiness. Then personality also influences job satisfaction, and research has shown that negative people, so people with negative personalities, or people who are very, critical of too many things, or who have a very negative outlook towards things, are usually not satisfied with their jobs, as compared to people who have positive core self evaluation. That is, people who find that they are worthy and they are capable, they tend to be more satisfied with their job. Now, people respond in a different way to dissatisfaction at work, and research has uh, given these four different ways of reacting to dissatisfaction at work. One is exit, that is behavior directed towards leaving the organization. So people who are dissatisfied at their work may exit the organization, and they may resign and look for some other thing, positions or new jobs. Another thing is voice, that is it is active and constructive attempt to improve conditions, including suggesting improvements, discussing problems, and so on. So you are voicing your opinion here, right? And you're voicing your opinion so that the conditions they change. The neglect is a very passive sort of a reaction, and it allows the things to become worse, and the person may neglect his work, come late to his work, be more absent. There's more accident and more mistakes and wastage of resources. And lastly, loyalty. Again, it is a passive reaction, but this is uh, here the employees, they optimistically wait for conditions to improve, right? So including speaking up for the organization in the face of external criticism and trusting the management to do right things. So the employees, they show their loyalty, but they also, and they optimistically wait for conditions to improve. Now, there are certain outcomes of job satisfaction at the workplace. Job satisfaction is related to job performance, and research has shown that the more satisfied the workers are, they are more productive in their work, and it leads to good performance at work. Secondly, high satisfaction also influences their citizenship behavior. So, high satisfaction leads to high OC. Thirdly, again, employees who are satisfied in their job also deal with the customers in a better way, and that again leads to customer satisfaction and loyalty. Then job satisfaction also leads to absenteeism. It is also related to absenteeism. So people who are dissatisfied will neglect their work more. They'll be more absent, and then again turnover is high when the employees are not satisfied at their work. So that is they tend to quit the organization if they don't find the conditions right. And but it all there are other variables also related here, like a person may not quit the organization if the economic environment is not good, and so he may just be committed to the organization because he's getting economic value. Another thing is tenure. So if the person has spent a lot of time in the organization, he's been working there for a number of years, and again he's less likely to quit the organization even if he's not satisfied with the job. Then job satisfaction is also related to workplace deviance. That is, again, you not doing your work, but you are engaging in other things like unionizing, and you are abusing the substances and stealing, being lazy, and showing signs of withdrawal. So, despite the overwhelming evidence of the impact of job satisfaction on the bottom line, most managers are either unconcerned about or overestimate worker satisfaction. So, these are the managerial implications. So, managers, they should look out for sign for employee attitudes, because they give signal to potential problems, and if the so they should look out how the employees are behaving in their work, and how satisfied they are in their work, how committed they are with their work. So these all indicate an outcome. Then managers should also try to increase job satisfaction and generate positive job attitudes, because job satisfaction is linked to so many favorable and unfavorable outcomes. So that is why job satisfaction is high with the employees. Then problems like low productivity and absenteeism, neglecting work, and so on will not be an issue. So managers should try to improve job satisfaction in employees. And lastly, they should focus on the intrinsic parts of the job. That is, they should try to make the work more challenging or interesting for the workers, and they should not just focus on the pay part, because pay, as we have research has shown that pay itself does not motivate, does not make the person satisfied with his job, and beyond a certain point does not satisfy the worker. So, and it is the work itself that is more fulfilling, that is more satisfying for a person. So that is why the manager should focus on the intrinsic parts of the job. Thank you.